What's going on, everybody? This is Abby here with another episode of Modern Day Unicorns. And today I have somebody from my childhood that I'm speaking with today, been able to see him transition and make his leaps and bounds to where he is today. His name is Nigel. So, Nigel, thank you so much for accepting my invitation to Modern Day Unicorns today. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Excited to be here. Excited to have this interview with you.
Awesome. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? So you can repeat your name again, tell us where you're from, and then what you're doing present day.
Okay. My name is Nigel Phiri. I currently live just outside of Atlanta here in the U.S. I was born in Zambia. I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa. I moved to the States when I was about 15, graduated high school, went to college here, and I currently work as a lawyer doing personal injury.
Awesome. So let's talk about your transition to the United States as a teenager and being ingrained in like a new country and a new system. So what was that like for you coming over?
So I went through that transition period twice, right? So when I was about 8, I moved from Zambia to Johannesburg and then Johannesburg to here. So both times, everything's different, right? Even before when I moved, two different African countries, still the cultures were completely different. Language is different, food, music, the slang is a big thing. And then I would say transitioning here was probably even harder, right? Because it's like 15, you're already going through like all the teenage issues that you'd be dealing with anyways, and then everything's different, right? All your friends are gone, so everything's got to be new. Like then coming here, I was like, man, how they dress is different, music they listen to is different. I have no idea, like learning what Southern accents was. I was like, I just remember being like, what? Can you say that a little slower? um, it took a while, but yeah, I eventually adapted. But yeah, it was a struggle transitioning for sure.
Now, when you say moving from different countries and different languages, how many languages do you speak?
See, I've been in the States for too long. I speak my native language, which is Nyanja, which is a Zambian language. I mostly speak with my mom and like my family members. Um, but English is actually the first language that I learned. My mom wanted to make sure I learned that first. And then when I lived in South Africa, my Zulu was pretty good. It's like the most common language there. But man, it's been so long and I'm not really in touch with the people. So I'm so out of practice. Yeah. So I'd say two and a
Mm,
half really, but yeah, I'm ashamed. It used to be more.
I hear you on that. Well, so you know that I live abroad and I've had the opportunity and the privilege to teach students that, know three, four. I had one student that was like, I'm trying to learn my fifth language so I can know more languages than my mother. And so I think it's so awesome to be able to have an experience in an entirely different language. I want to speak Spanish. I've just been too lazy. Even living in the UAE, I have like not even 1% Arabic. Is like a 0.00001 situation to where I know just how to say like hi and hurry up. Um, that's dope. Okay, so you're here, you're adjusting. America clearly is its own beast in and of itself. And coming here as a teenager is probably one of the roughest transitions as well. But let's talk about your decision. Um, you know, during high school or going into college, when did you decide to take the track that you take? I'm not sure if you went straight into school with the intentions of being a lawyer, but like, has it always been the plan?
No, it really hasn't. Like when I started college, I didn't declare a major for the longest because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Right. So I was like, let me try this elective, let me try that. And I was like, oh, I think I want to be a doctor. Right. And then the first biology exam came out and I got a D. And I was like, all right, I'm out of here. So I had to withdraw because that wasn't like I just couldn't stay awake. So that was some crushing dreams more so from my mom. I feel like every parent, especially African parents, want their kids to become a doctor. You know what I mean? And then Like I
That's
just
African
decided
and
that
Caribbean.
right. So I decided I wanted to go to law school. And like I remember my mom was so devastated. She was like, "So you want to be a liar for a living?" And I just laughed. I was like, "Wow." Um, but yeah, I'd say I had a like a mentor role model. If you remember Michelle Simpson, she very smart. She went to Harvard, right? Which I was like, oh, I'd love to go there. But she had like really, really good critical thinking skills, And then as I kind of got to know her, she basically was like, oh, a lot of it, you learned in law school, and she just kind of broke it down that it's more so just like they just teach you a different kind of how to think. It's not necessarily. I don't think it's anything that's typically very difficult. It's just like any kind of set of skills that you learn. So probably like late college, my major was didn't make no money, right? Kind of had to. So that
I
was
hear you
pretty
on
much.
that. That's dope. So what I'm hearing, what I hear frequently from guests as well, is that people that help them make decisions have been mentors, and I think it's very key. It's very helpful, even honestly, if you can't get a person to be a mentor, having somebody that you look up to. I've seen people say, hey, I have a virtual mentor. They don't even know they're my mentor, but I look up to this particular person and I follow their journey and they've inspired me. So big out, I mean, shout out to you and your mentor for having that connection to help kind of guide you through that decision making process. When it comes, so when you went to undergrad, what schools did you go to?
I went to Georgia State, just kept it super local. It was like right downtown, and I can't lie, like almost all my friends were over there. So it wasn't even like it didn't even feel like a new school. You know what I mean? It was like an extension of high school almost. Yeah, Georgia State,
Oh
and
wow.
I didn't go to college for 2 years after high school. They were like trying to give me
Mm-hmm.
all these issues with like my immigration status, and so they're trying to classify me as an international student. And I remember the tuition bill for international students was like $30,000, a semester. And I was like, man, are y'all serious right now? You know what I mean? And so once we got all that fixed out, it took a while, but I felt so behind,
Mm-hmm.
compared to my friends. So I went to school every summer and I graduated in 3 years because I was like, I got to catch up and get out of here. Then I went straight to law
Wow.
school. Yeah, I went straight to law school. I went to Mercer, which was in Macon, which was not a fun transition, right?
Macon, Georgia.
Uh, yeah, getting an apartment out there. It's like, wow, I'd never lived in a city that small, and then it was very, very, very white too. um, but yeah, it was a long 3 years, but got it done.
Mm. So that 2 year gap that you had from high school to college, what did you do to occupy your time? But not only occupy your time, what did you do to stay encouraged and not, I find people falling victim to the wait and just getting a job and starting to make some money and just giving up on like their dreams essentially. So how did you stay encouraged to say, I'm not just going to make temporary money. I'm going to go back to school once I get this thing sorted out.
See, I'd say like that's a tough question to answer because there's so many answers, right? A lot of people that influence me. First of all, my mom, right? So she was always on me. Why aren't you in school? Why aren't you in school? Like, what's going on? What's going on? So there was always that. I don't want to call it nagging, but kind of a little bit. Where it's like, okay, this is never ever gonna. She's never gonna let this go, right? And obviously, I was still living at home at the time, so it's not like I could escape it. Then I'd say my friends also, like all my friends were in college, right? So the people that I was around, one of my really good friends told me, he was like, yeah, man, my mom had told me, she was like, if you didn't go to school, she wanted me to stop hanging out with you. I was like, oh, for real? But, like that's how serious the education piece was to the people that I was around. And I think that was very important because if I started hanging out with friends who were not, there was a little bit of that too. Like once I started making, like first time I made like 1,000 or 1,500 in a week, I was like, oh man, that's a lot of money. I don't need to go to school, right? But then the people that I was around, my environment, Uncle Al was a big one. Like, yeah, no, that's
Hmm.
not what we're gonna do. You got to go to college. So yeah, that helped a lot.
That's great. Okay, so let's zoom into kind of present day. So you managed to get into school, you completed it in record time in order to, I guess you say catch up, but I feel like, yeah, the pressure of everybody else either in school or finishing was enough to give you that motivation to crack down and get it done, even skipping summers. Shout out to you. I love my summers, right? So, you you complete law school. What was it like for you after law school? Like getting a job? Take us through the process of you getting a job and then kind of moving forward, how you decided to go into law for yourself or start your own practice.
Um, I would say, like, first of all, law school in itself is like a different monster, right? Like they said, the hardest part is once you get in. But I remember the first semester, the main thing they were like, don't fall behind on the reading. Okay. And I was like, whatever. I like reading. It's not a big deal. Man, it was like 5 classes every day, and it was about 30 pages per class. And it's like very dense. Like you got to look up a lot of words. Oh, why do we have so many Latin words in English? And it's like, oh, in the legal sense, it was a lot of work, and people failed out, right? And by fail out is if you don't meet a certain GPA after the first year, they just very politely ask you not to come back. So that was very real. And I'd say more so like more discipline in getting it done than being like more intelligent. But graduating from law school is almost like a false sense of security because like, hey, it's May, graduation, everybody's partying, but the bar exam is 8 weeks later. You know what I mean? So it's like, did you really graduate though? Because if you don't pass, they don't let you become a lawyer. So it's like, yeah, you got this degree, but you can't really, you know what I mean? So it's like a false sense of security. So it's kind of channeling your mind into getting ready for that. And then I always thought I wanted to do defense work, like representing big corporations, like, oh, I represent Delta, Coca-Cola, like, oh, look at me, big corporate lawyer. Nah, I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. I like representing the people.
So, okay, so tell me more about how you were able to make that decision from, well, first of all, yes, to go to school and to still have to take a test to say that yes you can do it. I appreciate the test, don't get me wrong, but it even happens as a teacher to go to school and still have to take all the practices and continuing education. I appreciate it. It keeps people on their toes. It helps us know that they were actually paying attention and they can do what they say they're doing. But it's certainly, and I know the bar is much harder than the praxis, but it's another hurdle to get over. So shout out to everybody who's done it and everybody who's going to do it. You can do it. You can do it. I had to study for the praxis. I failed the math part one time, had to get a whole tutor to teach me regular math again. But like when it comes down to tests that you have to take to get it done, do it. The bar, question about the bar. If you do not pass the bar the first time, when are you allowed to take it again?
So it's only twice a year, right? February and July. So you can only take it those 2 times if you don't pass. And then
How many
typically
times are you
because,
allowed to take it before they say stop?
oof, I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
Just by the grace of God, I passed it the first time because for me, the thought of having to go through the prep again was probably like the most, discouraging thing because it's very, very intense. But I'll say when I was doing bar prep, the best advice I got came from someone who'd failed it twice, right? So she passed it on her third
Mm.
try. But her journey and how she pointed out like her pitfalls, like mistakes that she made. One thing she was like, "Oh, don't let people who tell you that they're scoring and doing. Don't let other people psych you out because people will do that. Like, oh, I'm dominating the practice exams. This, all that." So she was like, the psychology part of it is very important. For me, I was very stressed because we took a practice exam like 2/3 of the way in. It was like a real practice exam. I failed it badly. Failed it badly. Thank God, because that really helped me buckle down even more. And then from there, I was able to pass. But no, it's a beast. Yeah. Thank God I only got to take it one time.
What type of discipline? Yeah, what type of discipline did you have to give yourself during that particular time frame? And like, what was like your study habits?
they kind of give you like a little synopsis. What I would tell people is if you want to go to law school, right? Don't do it. No, I'm kidding. If you want to go, it's more so if you're single, stay single, right? Because your weekends and your nights during the week, you got to be reading. Your weekends, you got to be revising what you read, and then you got to be reading ahead. If you don't read ahead, the law school teaching style is the professor makes one person stand up, right? Then they grill you. And it can get really, really bad. And it got mostly bad for people who didn't read and thought they could be, you can't BS your way through it. It's not like high school or college where, for the most part, kind of just breeze along, right? Not there, they kind of really, really test you out and they want to make sure that you're learning. So it's the discipline is just don't let yourself fall behind. You know, I like a lot of great athletes, so I think I kind of liken it to that, like what it takes to become, like a Kobe or whatever. It's a lot of consistency, a lot of hard work, right? And then it's just the routine of doing it over and over and over again. And I think that's what gets a lot of people is, man, I don't think I could sit here and study for 4 hours, or 6, 8 hours, 7 days in a row, 10, 12 days in a row. A lot of people just be
Mm.
like, oh, I'm not doing that. Like, I need a break. I need to do this, so you just got to be able to isolate a little bit. And it really, really is more about trying to be disciplined.
Now, you finish, you went to school in Macon, Georgia, you passed the bar. What was the process like for you to land your first job?
Oof, that was a struggle in itself because it's like you're supposed to be looking for a job at the same time you're studying for the bar exam,
Wow.
and a lot of the applications for law firms be like very, very long, very time consuming. They want writing samples, they want this, they want references. Like it's just very, very time consuming. But the main thing is you'll get an offer, right? And then the offer is contingent on you passing the bar because you graduate in May, you take the bar in July, results don't come out till October. For some reason, it still takes them 3 months to get the results
Oh,
graded. So you're just kind
goodness.
of waiting, right? And what I've heard is people who, if they fail and they had a job, they get fired. So it's like that's kind of like a terrible way to set people up. It's like you have this job, but the employer's kind of like, well, you're kind of on this probationary period, and then we'll see if you qualify. But it's like I'm doing the job now. You know what I mean? Why do I need this piece of paper? So anyway, it came out passed, thank God. And that's when they were like, okay, now we want to bring you on as like a full-time employee and give you benefits and all that. Because before that, the job I had, it was part time. Like they were letting me work as many hours, all that stuff. But it was more so like part time, where you're not being your title is not that of a lawyer because you haven't passed yet.
Mm. Were you in the Atlanta metro area or were you still in Macon for your first job?
Oh no, I was right downtown on P Street. First firm I worked was in
Oh, there you go.
P Street Tower. Yeah.
All right. So you get past, I mean, I feel like you're a hurdler right now, just, running track. So you jump all those hurdles, right? And then
Mhm.
you say, I made it, but this isn't it. What was that like? When did you realize, like, okay, the either the place that I'm working at, the type of cases that I'm working on, I want to do something different? How did you come to that realization and how did you make that pivot?
Yeah. So I didn't really feel like I was serving a lot of purpose doing defense work. So I started out in law school. I got a job after like my second year doing insurance defense work for State Farm, right? Which I didn't even know was a thing. But it's
Hmm.
essentially when someone who has State Farm is getting sued because they hit somebody else's car, we provide them a legal defense, right? And what happens is you build a relationship. You're supposed to build a relationship with this adjuster, and then they send you cases. You do a great job, they send you more. Do a good job, send you more, right? Y'all got a nice little relation. I didn't feel like that was making an impact. Whereas, so I switched sides now where I'm representing the people who are actually bringing the claims. So now you talk to
Mm.
the people. find out how getting hurt impacted them, how they can't go to work now, right? They can't get around, and you actually get to know a real person and understand what they're going through. And then they're making a claim that they're entitled to get paid for, but then an insurance company is like, nah, I'm just gonna keep this money. You know what I mean? So I felt like it was impacting people more, so I felt more fulfilled being on this side. You know, which I like that. I like that a lot more.
So kind of being exposed to two sides of a situation helped you say, you know what, I'm gonna go to the other side and represent those. Okay, so I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you worked for a personal injury firm. Am I correct? Before you started your own practice?
Oh yeah, I worked for the biggest Morgan and Morgan, right? So their brand is huge. I think when I started, they had like 600 lawyers, and I was there almost 3 years, and they were over 1,000, right? And their whole was just to keep growing, 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 growing. So yeah, very, very big firm.
Mm. So what made you make the decision to say, I'm gonna start my own practice? What was that like for you to say, I'm doing this, I enjoy the work, I enjoy working with the clients. I think I can do this on my own.
Yeah, no, it was, I kind of just came to it as a realization. So the job I had right before I went to the corporate firm, it was just me and another attorney who had maybe like 10 more years of practice than I did, where what our partnership was supposed to be and what it ended up being weren't the same thing. So I kind of stuck it out for a couple of years, but I was like, this isn't working out for me. So I decided to leave. And that was like late 2018, 2019. I was thinking about starting my own firm. And the only reason that I didn't, one reason why I didn't, fear, right? I was just
Mm,
afraid that I wouldn't get enough business to stay in business, you know? And so I got an offer at a really good firm. It's like, okay, steady paycheck, they got a great reputation. So I ended up taking the job, and it really ended up being the better decision that I made, because like I thought I was a good lawyer before. Yeah, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything at all. Like I got to go see some phenomenal, real like titans of the industry, and got to learn and train. And so when I did decide to leave, which I started my own firm, I think I incorporated like October of last year.
mhm.
I didn't have any fear. I was a lot more confident in myself and my own skills, because like the business model there at the corporate firm where I was is they just give you cases, and then they leave you be. You're not reporting to anyone. You're not being supervised. They expect you to get it done on your own. So they're kind of teaching you how to do it by yourself, But then they had an open door policy with all these really, really great lawyers that are willing to help and willing to, listen to whatever questions and give you resources and all that. So that's kind of how they thrive over there. So I really took advantage of that a lot. Like I really tried to learn as much as I could, build relationships, still got relationships with great mentors. Um, the individual readings, like you just hear a lot about really, really good materials for lawyers. So there's a number of like books that really, really made a big difference.
You'll have to share some of those with us towards the end. So what I
Yeah.
wanted to highlight was the fact that even when fear does creep out, being able to be a part of a system where you can see a great business model, and where you can practice and work and learn from people who are doing what you want to do, that's a great stepping stone. I don't necessarily call it like a delay, because we all have fear, we all are unsure of our skills and abilities, but being able
Right.
to be in the presence of people who have got it done is a great opportunity. So anybody who is looking to transition somewhere and they're not really sure, make sure you surround yourself with the people, or put yourself in the environment to where you have no choice but to learn what you are actually trying to attain. But my next question for you is, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about what a lawyer's practice might be, I can't help but think that it is like an entrepreneurial journey as well as continuing to be a lawyer. So I feel like
Mhm.
me being an entrepreneur, that's heavy enough already, but to be an entrepreneur and to provide these skills and services for people and putting them together is a lot. What was it like to literally start a new business and then also find clients within that same personal injury realm? How did you go
Mhm.
from, okay, I got a file to get a whatever it is for the business, and then this is where I can find clients to service my business so I can make some money.
Okay. I'd say where I mostly got business when I got on my own was word of mouth from clients that I did work for from before. Like you wouldn't think that that would be I didn't think that word of mouth would be enough to sustain me in business before. It's actually a lot more powerful than I thought. So just doing good work for people has really, really like paid dividends. And then, I'm sorry, Abby, what was the other part of your question?
The actual business. So is it an LLC? Like, what was the? Where do you go to start a law
Um,
firm?
Yeah, it's man, it's really two jobs because a lot of like bigger firms is they'll have business people to do the business side and then just let the lawyers just do the legal part. One very common corny jokes lawyers law students like to make is that's why they became lawyers is because they hate math, right? So anytime you put like a balance sheet in front of them, it's like, oh my god, you know what I mean? It's like it's not even that serious. But the smaller firm where I was, we had a 50-50 partnership and I got to see and learn about what he did. I also got to learn a lot about what not to do. That's probably, I'd say, one of the biggest things I've taken from the firms where I've worked is a lot like good things of how you want to run your practice, but then also things you don't want to do, right? How to avoid a lot of
Mm-hmm.
certain issues and what it's like to actually build your own team. But like running a law firm, it's very different depending on the kind of law that you do, right? So like what I do and maybe what a real estate lawyer does is very, very different. My whole job begins the moment someone gets in some type of accident, right? And it's a car wreck, slip and fall, something like that. And now they're making a call and they're making a claim against an insurance company, to get paid for that injury. So that's essentially where you're the attorney that they call, and then you kind of take it from there. If that answers your
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
question.
Well, I wanted. Yes, it answers an element of the question, but literally, where do you go to say I want to start a law firm? Is it an LLC? Is it a corporation? How did you get the paperwork to say
Oh, you,
I'm a law
oh, you mean
firm?
like the technical? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
no,
No,
yeah,
you
because
you
I
just
think
did corp.
yeah, I know how to start regular businesses, but it's just like a law practice. What is that?
Yeah, so it's I don't know if it has like a special designation when you're creating your firm because when I
Mm-hmm.
created it, just kind of designate like any legal purpose for my business. But the one thing that they want is you have to have an active bar license with your state bar because you're given an attorney trust account, which is clients in my job, like client money that goes to the doctors that we work with, right? So you have to be able to manage all that. And they only really give you that. It's that account is literally monitored by the state bar where like if it overdrafts, they can suspend your license for it, right? So you want to get an LLC, then you contact your state bar about getting your trust account information, and then that's it. But most law firms they operate as for profit unless you are just running like legal services for free, then you can be a nonprofit. But yeah, it's usually like a LLC or a partnership.
Hmm. That's interesting to say. Okay, great. I have this. I have my licensure and my bar, and they give you, not necessarily give you, but you clearly have to earn it to manage it. Trust account. That's dope. All right. So as we transition, I want to know from the client side. So, everybody, God forbid, but like, walk me through the process if somebody were to be injured, slip and fall, a car accident, work, probably work accident, maybe, yeah, work accident. What would you tell? What are the first actions that need to be done for somebody who is injured? And yes,
Mm-hmm.
walk us through the steps for somebody who's injured and what they should do.
Okay, so like super simple. I just tell clients three things, right? Call the cops is number one because the officer is going to come, write a police report, give somebody a ticket. Whoever gets the ticket, the other person can use that as proof that, hey, this is the person whose insurance should pay because a police officer conducted an investigation, wrote them a ticket, running a stop sign, whatever. Then after that, we all got fancy phones, document everything, right? Make sure you take pictures of the damage. Then, if you need um, to get medical assistance, that's it. After that, call a lawyer.
See, all right, listen up, folks. You heard him. He said, call the police. Don't just try to handle it on your own. Use that fancy
Mm.
$1,000 phone you have. Take as many pictures and videos as you want to help build the evidence for the case and handle any So, okay, with that, yes, if you need medical attention or medical assistance, uh, my assumption is that you need to keep track of all of the visits and the bills and things of that nature to help give you more content documentation to fight their case. Am I correct in that?
In a way, your attorney kind of tracks all that for you. So for me, I just tell my clients, look, tell me where you went to the doctor. That's all we need to know, right? Other than that, focus on getting better. We'll take care of everything else.
That's awesome.
So
That's
we
awesome.
track all your bills, we check all your records, we make sure they get paid off so that they're not coming after you or putting, because they'll take you to collections, right? We make sure none of that happens to you while you're getting that treatment.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And it's comforting to know that there are people and lawyers out there that are working specifically in that interest for people, helping them take care of stuff. Because, of course, if you get hurt, there are a lot of things that you cannot do, and it can be a very tedious process. You know what? I was about to say, especially through COVID, but so you started your law firm kind of in the midst of it. How did you find
Yeah.
well, life technically didn't necessarily stop, but were there any additional challenges when it came to COVID as well? Also, sorry, another point. I just recently spoke with another lawyer, and he's talked about how the justice system has gone digital.
It has. Well, it's trying to. So the biggest way we can make an impact in our job, right, with insurance company is you don't want to pay what we want you to pay. Let's just go to a jury trial and we'll have a trial and then I'll get the money from a jury. So COVID, they're not calling people to jury duty anymore because it's unsafe to call a bunch of people and put them in a room, right? And then so all jury trials stopped. And what happened with a lot of the cases is some of the adjusters were like, well, you can't really do anything about it. So we'll see you whenever jury trials come back. And they literally have been holding these claims hostage, holding these clients hostage for a long time because they know that the case is worth a lot of money that they're just not going to pay. And the only way we can get them to do it is to have a jury trial, right? Other than that, they have to voluntarily pay a settlement, which they're just not going to do, unfortunately. So that's the biggest way that COVID really like almost stopped, what we do. A lot of doctors, like we work with doctors a lot with our clients, right? So we very quickly had to come up with a list of doctors who could do telemedicine so that the clients could keep treating. Because if the clients don't stop treating, if the clients stop treating, now the case doesn't have value. It's like just kind of steamrolls. But that's
Mm.
the biggest thing is treatment trials are now starting to come back, and you know, D-Day is coming for a lot of people.
I wonder what people do in that with that particular delay or hold up, especially if they're in a position to where they can't work and now they can't get a jury trial, and it's clearly taken years for this thing to resolve itself. So again, my prayers up for the people who are still waiting for payday. But as we've been talking today, we know that there's definitely some beauty in that process. And I think I've seen or I've read that you've heard you've won some pretty big cases that people they're not so mad over that long wait time anymore. Can you give us
Yeah, no, they get happy. They get checked.
And I'm about to, yeah, the checks make a difference. The checks make a difference. Now, without giving too many details, can you maybe walk us through one of your biggest, uh, what most enjoyable moments for yourself within your practice, or maybe a case that you won that's just like, oh man, this is like a large amount of money that I've been able to settle or get from my client. Walk us through that process of how you celebrated yourself and that victory.
um, I'd say there's been a few, but really it's just winning like the tougher cases where the clients are really really hurt, and you can, the kind of despair kind of sinks in, and you can see they don't really think anything's ever going to happen, and it's a slow process. Or somebody who came from a different attorney. Like I had a client that I we settled a really big case for her very recently, but she hired a lawyer, right, and couldn't get in touch with them for 3 months. She was like, I would call, and then I would just leave voicemails, and no one would ever call me back. you know. So when I got her case and we got it settled, maybe like 4 months later, right? It was a lot of work, but like that completely changed her perception on what lawyers are like, you know, because the person she was
Mm,
dealing with before, sadly, she was black, he was black too. She was just, it had just turned her off to the process completely. So there's been a number of clients that when they're really hurt, you can see how that amount of money is going to really, really help their life. I had one recently. She was an old lady. She had a really, really bad fall, had a very bad, very complicated shoulder surgery, and her case, she fell outside in broad daylight, right? It's a very tough case, but we ended up getting her a really, really good settlement. The defense attorney was just really unprepared in a lot of the depositions. So it ended up going really, really well for us because that's really what the name of the game is. But it was a huge difference to her where her life was going to be just very different because she was older.
hmm
Her husband had recently passed and her children lived very far away, so she was alone, and she needed that money to at least be able to stay in the assisted living where she lived because it was a pretty nice place, it was pretty expensive. So we were able to get that done for her. I was really, really happy for her.
That's excellent. So, last question, kind of on this particular topic, but how many clients do you typically have on your roster or want to take maybe within a certain time period? Because I can't say month to month because this can take, long periods of time. But how many clients do you like to have um, within a certain period of time?
Uh, when I was doing corporate, their business model was volume, so I had like 150 clients by myself. I never ever want to do that many. I have a third of that now, and that's so much better because I feel like I give better level of service to the clients.
Hmm
It's hard to stay on top of 150 people by yourself, whereas 50 people by myself, I can talk to them a little bit more so I can get a little bit more into the weeds of the cases because the devil is in the details with what I do, when you have too much volume like that. So I prefer to be on a lower volume, but my individual cases tend to be higher value, and I've done it all. I've done super, super low impact, like parking lot car cases and magistrate, like court TV where you see them arguing for like few hundred. I've been there, I've done it all. So I like what I'm doing now, where it's like the cases are smaller, but they're more high value.
Mm. Okay, so let's discuss really quickly the elephant in the room. At the end of the day, granted, you're doing, what you love and what you enjoy, but when it comes to these cases and these large settlements, when it comes to money for yourself, uh, how how is it? Are you making a healthy living? Is it enough to supersede your expectations? Is all that you went through and all the trouble for those people who are interested in being a lawyer, when it comes down to it, how is the money?
Oh, it's definitely worth it, especially if you're an entrepreneur by yourself. Even when I was doing, corporate law, like making a few hundred grand a year, but you're paying so much, and you really learn why people hate paying taxes when you see half of everything you're making gone before you get it. Right? I remember, like when people ask me why I started my own firm, the biggest reason why I quit was every time I got paid, I would get pissed. Every time I got paid, I would get mad. Like I would get really, really mad, and there would be times like, "Yo, I gotta go home. I can't work the rest of the day," because I felt like they were just robbing me blind, right? So that was like the different thing is also when you're working as entrepreneur, right? You get to keep a lot more of what you make. So it's not how much you make. It's not only about how much you make; it's how much you keep. So when
Mm-hmm.
you're being taxed as somebody's employee, what I've learned is corporations can really like pass off their taxes. That's why, hear stuff like, oh, why hasn't Jeff Bezos paid taxes? Like there's so many loopholes when you're the business owner. So that's probably the biggest thing that I would say is, let's say I got a settlement check that was the same amount as when I worked corporate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the taxes I'm paying are a third of what I used to pay before, because it's the check is coming to you as an LLC as the business owner. Whereas when it's coming to
Mm-hmm.
you as an employee, they get to tax you, 50% up front. There's nothing you can do about it.
Wow. And then shout out to the write-offs, okay?
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Shout out to those two. Like having an account is like crazy. It's so necessary.
Oh, okay. So, all right. In your business, how many people do you have? Do you have other people working for you now? Are you still solo? What does that
I
look
do.
like?
I do. Um, Let me kind of answer your last question a little bit. I feel like what you were more so asking me was like, dude, is it like worth it? Worth it? Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it really, really is. Like it's been. I really feel like I really started to enjoy my job when I started my own firm. You know what I mean? But it's been a long journey. I'm in 7 years now, and man, it is so worth it. Because you get to do a lot for not only for yourself but people that depend on you as well. So I'm happy for like my mom and my daughter is going to have a sweet life.
That's awesome. How many people do you have working at your firm right now? Or have like, are you the only lawyer? You got like an accountant or somebody that runs the office?
Yeah, so I just brought my paralegal on full time. So before that, it was just me, paralegal part time. I have a bookkeeper, but she's not an employee. That's more so like she just does books for like a bunch of lawyers that I know, and I'm one
Mm-hmm.
of her clients. Um, but yeah, I think I might. I'm looking to possibly get a building this year, so we'll see how it goes.
All the best on that. Now, I want to thank you so much for the time that we've spent together. It's been great being able to hear your story and catch
I
up.
didn't I didn't
But I'm going
realize
to
it'd be
ask,
so long.
I'm about to talk, literally with these interviews. Honestly, I'm shocked at how quickly time passes, and how much people have to share. So it's been great for me. I'm just like, oh man, I hope my episodes aren't too long. And then I'm just like, whatever. I enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully the listeners will too, but they have to stick to the end to hear the tips. So I am going to ask you to share any tips that you want with a person. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who wants to be a lawyer, but maybe who's somebody who's looking for encouragement to keep going. Maybe it is a person who's in that gap year, or that student that transferred to a new country and is having issues getting into college. What, 3 tips would you give people just in general to help keep them going and things that they can apply today?
Okay, so the first thing I'd say is it's more of a marathon than a sprint, right? If you want to try to keep your end goal in mind, the day to day can sometimes really really beat you down. So I'd say try not to ride the waves of the day to day and just kind of keep your eyes fixed on your end goal. So if you want to be a lawyer, be a doctor, whatever it's you want to be, just focus on the end part, and then realize that it's more so not about being smart or clever or intelligent. It's more so about discipline and consistency, right? Because I'd say like especially that first semester in law school, man, that was the smartest people I'd ever been around, in my life in that one semester. Like, no, seriously, there were some brilliant people in there, but a lot of them would come to class and you could tell they weren't ready for class, right? Because it's either you're still living like the undergrad life or whatever. So the discipline is important. For me, knowing myself, I had all my friends at Georgia State, could have gone to GSU. That would not have been good, right? Too many distractions there. So, I hated living in Macon, it was great because I knew absolutely nobody there. So when I needed to study the whole weekend, nobody was hitting me up because I can't say that I would have had the willpower to turn him down. But like phone was super dry, man. So it made it. I wasn't about to drive to Atlanta to hang out with people just for the weekend. You know what I mean? And I didn't really have any friends out there, so that's really important. And then the last thing I would say is really find great mentors. And even if it's just one mentor. One of my favorite law school professors used to tell me all the time, he used to say, when you start practicing, you really need a lawyer who's invested in seeing you become great. And I didn't really understand what that meant till I got out there and I didn't have that, right? Because then I felt like I was drowning. And then once I got somebody, they kind of just give you a lot of structure because unfortunately, law school doesn't teach you how to be a lawyer, right? They just kind of teach you the skills of how to go about doing the job. Like, for example, they'll teach you what emotion is, right? But they won't actually show you how to write it. So,
Mm-hmm.
so you know what it is, but now you're on Google trying to figure out what is this actually supposed to look like. You know what I mean? So when you have someone who can like show you all those things right off the bat, so you're not trying to figure it all out right away. That's really really important. Oh, and I'd say like for me, my job is competitive, right? Like in the criminal aspect, they say the state has the burden of proving. In civil cases, as the plaintiff's attorney, we have the burden, right? So if I don't make a good case, client's not getting paid, nobody's getting paid. So just really trying to master the craft has really, really paid off, I would say. I try to read everything that I can. I don't know if you can see this. I'm a super nerd too. So like this was a really, really great book for me. This like I didn't even know this is a special type of deposition when you're deposing corporations, which
Can you say
didn't
say
even
the
learn it
names
in
of
law
the
school.
books? Say the names of the books for me for people who may be
This one,
listening.
sure thing. This one is called 30B6 Deposing Corporations, Organizations, and the Government. This is really, really important because it's very different to depose somebody in like a car wreck case where they rear-ended someone, or now you're deposing someone in a slip and fall at like a Walmart. How you would depose Walmart versus how you depose a driver, it's not the same. So this for me really, really helped me a lot. And then I'd say like on this is probably like one of my favorites, right? And
Kobe
this
Bryant,
book,
Mamba
like
mentality.
it connects with me on so many levels. The Mamba mentality. So there's this one section in the book where he talks about it's like some gamesmanship, but he talks about how he knew specific spots on the court where the ref couldn't see, so he would get away with like pulling, elbowing, hitting people, all that stuff. And he just talks about it, and he's like, because I know where the ref is supposed to be standing, I know what I can get away with. And I feel like that transfers into what I do because you have to really, really understand the rules of evidence, understand what you can and can't do in depositions or in trials. And when other lawyers don't know that, number one, I'm not about to help you, right? Number two, I'm really about to exploit that to the best of my client's ability, right? Because it's literally win or lose. So really, really trying to be the master of your craft is very, very important. I'd say it's probably one of my favorite journeys in my career is trying to get to that 10, did they say it takes 10,000 hours to master something?
Mm-hmm.
Like even though I've been practicing 7 years, I'd say I've only been doing plaintiff's law like 4 years. So I'd say I got like another year and a half to get to the 10,000 hours.
That's awesome. Nigel, thank you so much for everything that you shared. Can you just say the name of that
Thank
second
you.
book for me really quick, just so we can have it on in audio? Or the
This
first book
one?
that you, no, sorry, the first book. Say the name of the first book.
Oh, this one is called Winning at Depositions.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha.
he just gives you like really little strategies that you never would have thought of um, that I just learned from there, and I try to implement them. So like one of them, for example, he'd be like, when you're taking a deposition, the standard thing is you always sit across from the witness that you're deposing. And he's like, well, try to get the witness to sit at the head of the table, and then you sit right next to them at like a 90-degree angle.
Hmm.
Because if you're closer that way, psychologically, it's easier to break down the barriers of question. So I'm reading this and I'm like, let me try that. And it really, really works. it really, really makes a huge
That's
difference.
great. Now, please share all of the places and spaces that we can follow, support, even the information to where I believe you practice in the state of Georgia.
Mhm.
If anybody's hurt or has an accident and they can call you, share that information to where we can get in contact with you, please.
Sure thing. Yeah, I practice in the state of Georgia, licensed here in Georgia. I live right outside of Metro Atlanta. Um, I primarily just do personal injury law. So if you're hurt in like a car wreck or slip and fall, my Instagram, Nigel the lawyer. But if I can't specifically help you myself, I more than likely know a lawyer in whatever kind of law that you need. There's so many different type of practice areas, and primarily we as especially Black people, we don't even know. So whatever you're going through, if you think you need an attorney, just DM me and I'll at least let you talk to or get you the info for someone who's knowledgeable and they can let you know.
Thank you, thank you. And I'll put all this information in the books that he recommended in the show notes as well. Thank you once again, Nigel. This has been an awesome conversation. And to all of our listeners, thank you for hanging around. If you got some value out of this, please like, share, subscribe. If you want to be a lawyer, hit up Nigel. He's very responsive and awesome in that, right? If you are a unicorn or you know somebody that is, I'd love to continue having these conversations. So please comment below, go ahead and add them or hit me up in the DMs. You can follow us as well at Modern Day Unicorns on Instagram and Facebook. And until next time, you all take care and we will see you.